Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar on ACEEE's 2020 State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. Today's webinar will discuss the results and findings from this year's report. My name is Shruti Vaidyanathan. I'm the Transportation Program Director at ACEEE, and I will be your moderator today. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping announcements. Your screen is customizable. Feel free to make the various windows as large or as small as you would like. Click through the widgets at the bottom of the screen to make sure you aren't missing any options available. Next, PowerPoints presented today can be downloaded from the resource list that's listed on your screen. Attendees are in listen-only mode, but can submit questions through the Q&A box at any time during the webcast. The Q&A can be accessed in the menu at the bottom of your screen if it is not already visible. The presenters will respond to your questions during the last 15 minutes of the webcast. Lastly, this webcast is being recorded and the recording will be shared with registrants within the next few days. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers. Joining us today, we have Governor Jared Polis from the state of Colorado, Governor Steve Sisolak from the state of Nevada, Commissioner Andrew McAllister from the California Energy Commission, Lauren Ross, Senior Director for Policy with ACEEE, and last, but certainly not least, Weston Berg, ACEEE Senior Researcher and lead author of this year's State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. With that, let's get started with our first speaker, Lauren Ross. Lauren will give you a brief overview of what our audience can expect to hear during today's webcast. Lauren, over to you.
Great, thank you, Shruti. And hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Just to provide some background about ACEEE, we are a research nonprofit with a mission of advancing energy efficiency policies, programs, and investment. We work across the utilities, buildings, transportation, and industry sectors to ensure that the benefits of energy efficiency are shared by all. Also, some context on the state scorecard. We released our inaugural version of this in 2007, so this is the 14th annual release of the report. It's undergone some changes over the years and continues to evolve with a changing energy landscape. But overall, our goal has remained the same, to provide an ongoing status update that compares how states are performing relative to one another and year to year on their energy efficiency policies. And we look forward to sharing this with you today. Thank you.
Great. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for that overview, Lauren. Our next speaker is Weston Berg from ACEEE State Policy Team and lead author of the State Scorecard. He will discuss the State Scorecard's key findings for 2020. Weston, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Shruti, and sorry for jumping in there. But thanks everyone for our speakers for joining us today. Lauren gave a quick overview of the scorecard goals, and we've been putting this out since 2007, ultimately to highlight best practices, encourage friendly competition, and share examples from across the country of how states can improve and cut energy waste across their economies. Because especially in recent years, without a strong federal presence to promote national efficiency standards, state policies have really been critical drivers for advancing energy savings. So with that, we'll just get into some of our results. So here it is. This is our 2020 map of rankings, which are based on 30 different scoring metrics addressing policies covering utilities, transportation, buildings, and appliances. COVID certainly dominated a lot of storylines this year and slowed a lot of efforts to advance state clean energy goals. And that was particularly true in the energy efficiency sector, where we lost around 400,000 jobs in a field that typically involves a lot of home visits, and those employment numbers remain down. And state policymaking certainly moved at a different pace this year with so many legislatures working remotely. But despite these obstacles, we did also see plenty of achievements to celebrate, particularly in many of the dark blue states pictured here, which are the top ranking states. California was our top state this year, finishing in first for the first time since 2016, and really with a lot to highlight over the past few years with the adoption of net zero building energy codes, its leadership on buildings electrification, vehicle emission standards, appliance standards, not to mention reaching recent goals to end sales of new fossil fuel powered vehicles in 15 years. And we also had a lot of other states showing a good deal of improvement as well. Nevada, for example, who we'll hear from, moved up 5 points in the rankings. adopting important appliance standards into state law last year, and has also taken steps to strengthen building energy codes across the state. And Nevada's also targeted transportation efficiency, moving to join the dozen other states that have adopted California's zero emissions vehicle standards at a time when there's been a lot of pushback at the federal level on vehicle efficiency, and state leadership has really been key. So in the months prior to the first impacts of the pandemic, energy efficiency work was going strong, proving to be a strong job creator, providing close to 2.5 million jobs across the nation. And then, of course, COVID happened. And while data on energy saved by utility energy efficiency programs in 2020 won't be out until the spring, it will undoubtedly show the damaging impacts and how damaging remains to be seen. But the latest data for this report was through 2019, which was a good year, with efficiency spending up about 3.8% to $8.4 billion total across both electric and gas programs. And electric savings down slightly from 27.1 to 26.9 million megawatt hours. But we'll continue to monitor how 2020 turns out, and we would expect hopefully some rebounds into 2021 after this year. Despite these challenges, we did see progress as regulators and utilities work continued on a number of important clean energy bills and rulemakings, including in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York, as well as Arizona. And a number of states have stepped up some efficiency efforts since the pandemic, recognizing the important role efficiency can play in the economic recovery by helping homes and businesses reduce costs, also improve living conditions, and create jobs, all while helping meet climate goals. So these were some other important trends we'd like to wanted to highlight. We saw some states move forward on important developments in utility efficiency. Virginia, of course, was the big story earlier in the year with the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which made it the 27th state with an energy efficiency resource standard, which was very exciting, and the first statewide 100% clean electricity target in the Southeast. New Jersey passed some game-changing utility rules in the summer to raise utility savings goals and make important utility business model reforms to incentivize efficiency. And then finally, just last month, we saw great news in Arizona with regulators approving an extension of the state's utility EERS as part of a new 100% clean electricity standard in a really important bipartisan vote, which was really an important step forward that lays the groundwork for their incoming commission to refine and finalize those rules in 2021. It was also a big year for building sector efficiency. We continue to see probably a dozen states move forward to adopt stronger building energy codes. There was the release of the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, which are the model energy codes for new residential and commercial construction, and represented the largest improvement in efficiency in the last 3 code cycles, which was a huge achievement for the coalition of advocates in cities that made their voices heard in voting for those codes. It was somewhat of an embattled year for vehicle efficiency, but highlighting the important role of states. With the Trump administration rolling back fuel economy standards, we saw California and a number of other states hold the line by embracing stronger clean car rules, including California's zero emissions vehicle standards. 14 states have adopted California's low emission vehicle standards, and 12 have adopted its ZEV standards. And that's potentially could grow to 15 now with the pending additions of Nevada, New Mexico, and Minnesota, which are all drafting similar rules. This year's report, we also we highlight a number of regional leaders as well that included California as well as Massachusetts, which Massachusetts has always been a leader, ranking second this year, and on the strength of a lot of their efforts to advance building decarbonization and electrification through its utility programs. But also Virginia, which led the South, and Colorado, which led the Southwest, both of which have taken important steps to ramp up utility efficiency programs. Minnesota led the Midwest and continues to move forward with potential policies to promote building electrification and EV adoption. And we also identified other states to watch in each region where promising developments are emerging. And those included Arizona, Virginia, New York, and Washington, all of which have adopted 100% clean electricity standards. Finally, just to wrap up with a selection of some key state strategies for energy efficiency that a lot of the top-ranking states in the report typically have adopted, establishing a multi-year energy efficiency resource standard to really encourage utility savings investment, as more than half of states have now done, and coupling these with performance incentives to further motivate utility efficiency investment. In the building sector, updating building energy codes and taking steps to ensure compliance through periodic studies and supporting code training for builders and code officials. In transportation, adopting stringent tailpipe emission standards, as well as standards and incentives for zero emissions in electric vehicles, as we saw from another number of states this year. And also adoption of appliance standards. Even when state appliance standards are not adopted at the federal level, adoption by just a few states can be enough to impact national markets, which a number of states have recognized. So plenty of opportunities here. Looking ahead, the state role will continue to be very important. Congress will be limited in terms of what it'll be able to accomplish. So we see state leadership as still being very important, particularly on utilities and buildings. And I think we see a lot of progress. We saw a lot of progress this year, and we look forward to seeing more going into next year. So thanks everyone for your time, and I'll pass it back to Shruti to introduce some of our excellent panelist speakers.
Thanks so much, Weston, and thank you for that great overview of this year's results. So moving on, we're now going to hear from Governor Jared Polis from Colorado, which led the Southwest in this year's scorecard. Governor Polis is an entrepreneur, education leader, and public servant. Most recently, he served as the U.S. representative for Colorado's 2nd Congressional District, which stretches from Larimer County and the Wyoming border to the Central Mountains to Boulder and the U.S. 36 high-tech corridor. During his time in Congress, the Center for Effective Lawmaking ranked Governor Polis the most effective member of Colorado's House delegation due to his success working across the aisle to improve Colorado's schools, protect public lands, and support startups and small businesses. We're very grateful to have the governor here with us today. So Governor Polis, over to you.
Thank you, Shruti, for the kind introduction, and the whole team at ACEEE for the work that went into developing the State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. I want to thank my fellow panelists, including Governor Sisolak from Nevada as well, for regional leadership on these issues. It's really exciting to be here to discuss the importance of state leadership on energy savings. You know, as the report notes, this has been a year of unprecedented challenges with the global pandemic, the devastating economic impact. And in confronting these challenges, our commitment to climate action and clean air is only strengthened. Energy efficiency, clean energy, more critical than ever before to help the economy build back stronger, saving businesses money, creating the good green jobs of the future, and reducing pollution and improving public health, really in a central focus right now. And we're thrilled that Colorado is really a regional leader in the scorecard today, one of the most improved performances and ranking 11th across the nation. But there's a lot of work to do, and I think I speak for most Coloradans when I say we'd like to be at the top of the list in the future. So this success is driven by a real collaborative approach in our state. Innovative leadership from the private sector, local leadership, utilities, advocacy partners, and of course, a very strong commitment from my administration to move Colorado towards a clean energy future. We've seen here in Colorado the impact of climate change up close and personal. The 3 largest wildfires in the history of our entire state all occurred this summer and fall. We have a statewide drought. And I think it's that connection to the climate and our climate-dependent economy in ag and tourism and recreation that has helped Colorado become a leading voice on climate issues. In September, I released our draft greenhouse gas pollution reduction roadmap that outlines the specific strategies for how we can reduce our carbon emissions. It takes into account the progress we've made so far, legislatively, bills I've signed, bills my predecessor signed, through work at the Public Utilities Commission and more, and the key actions to make sure that we are on a path to improving our air quality, reducing our carbon emissions in Colorado. We've made significant progress so far. We modernized building codes and appliance efficiency standards. We were the first state in a decade to adopt the zero-emission vehicle standards. We've established pathways for our electric utilities to make significant investments in transportation electrification is one of the largest polluting sectors. And we know there's a lot more work to do. We need to continue the historic transition that's underway towards clean, renewable energy. We need to continue to utilize efficient, clean technology to modernize how we heat and power our homes and how we travel across the state. We can accelerate through the adoption of electric cars, trucks, and buses, as well as electric heat pumps, insulation for homes and businesses. To be successful on a scale and timeline that we know that science indicates we need to pursue these sector-based policies based on standards, based on investment, based on innovation, based on partnership between the public and private sector and local governments. It's not only good for climate, but also improves the quality of life today and generates savings for consumers. That's why we're pursuing strategies that will create high-quality jobs, lasting economic growth, lower electricity bills, reduce local air pollution that disproportionately impacts communities of color, and continue to help create the good jobs of the future right here in Colorado. So thank you for the opportunity to share just some of our perspective from the great state of Colorado. We have a lot of important work ahead. We look forward to our continued partnership with states like Nevada and, of course, organizations like ACEEE to achieve our shared goals.
Thank you so much, Governor Polis, for those comments on Colorado's energy and climate successes. We'll now turn to Governor Steve Sisolak to share with us a few remarks from Nevada. Governor Sisolak was elected to the Clark County Commission in 2008, where he served as a chairman until being sworn in as governor of Nevada. On the commission, Governor Sisolak was known as a coalition builder and problem solver. As governor, he's working to strengthen Nevada's statewide economy by diversifying its industries and working to attract new fields and recruiting companies to the Silver State. Throughout his time in office, Governor Sisolak's goal is to keep Nevada strong and moving forward by investing in education, creating jobs by diversifying the economy, and guaranteeing quality, affordable health care for all Nevadans. Thank you so much for joining us today, Governor Sisolak. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. I am Steve Sisolak, the governor of Nevada. And I'd like to first off thank the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy for inviting me to speak here today and organizing this webinar in a safe and virtual manner. I also want to give a shout out to my colleague, Governor Jared Polis, who does an incredible job in Colorado and has been a great resource to me and to confide in and to get advice from. And we have a tremendous partnership with the Western governors, and I think that that's gone a long way on the energy front. I would also like to thank my director, David Bobzian, and the Governor's Office of Energy for the work that they have done. They've undoubtedly led the way in our state in building an energy code adoption and pursuing low-emission vehicles and zero-emission vehicle standards. Thanks to their hard work, we're proud to have the state of Nevada be recognized as the most improved state in the nation in 2020. Thank you on behalf of our entire state, and we look forward to reaching new heights in the years ahead of us. This accomplishment cannot go understated. We are all thankful for the extraordinary efforts that took place in order to get us here today. To highlight a few of these efforts, the Governor's Office of Energy, along with our governmental partners, have worked hard to address the lighting efficiency in our state. In 2019, I signed AB 54, which led Nevada to adopt energy efficient standards for general service lamps, which would have mirrored the federal standard. Ultimately, the Trump administration rolled back this standard, but Nevada continued to ensure these cost-saving modern bulbs were made available to our communities. When it comes to building regulations, the adoption of the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code led to an increase in efficiency requirements of building energy codes. Additionally, the Governor's Office of Energy plans to implement the new International Energy Conservation Code upon publication in 2021. Which is projected to make our state 10% more energy efficient. Transportation is a sector that most of us depend upon, but unfortunately, it still seems to be the greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions for many states in our nation, including our own in Nevada. Nevadans are resilient, and we don't shy away from our challenges. That is why we plan to make this issue a priority as we tackle it head on. This year, we announced the Clean Cars Nevada initiative. This helps our state to seek out low and zero emission vehicles with the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions tied with personal transportation. In 2019, Nevada set the goal for a 28% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2025 and a 45% reduction by 2030, ultimately leading us to a zero or near zero emission state by 2050. To meet these goals, we have released the first ever Nevada climate strategy. This climate strategy provides our state with a roadmap for reducing our greenhouse gas emissions across all economic sectors, laying the groundwork for climate adaptation, and establishing the structure for ongoing climate actions across the entire state of Nevada. Meeting our climate commitments requires every building in our state to become more energy efficient. And to do that, we aim to have an increase in investment in cost-effective energy efficiency programs. These programs provide support for low-income Nevadans who often struggle to pay energy costs and without proper cooling are most at risk during heat waves like the one we saw earlier this year. Last but not least, our state is proud to have proclaimed October 7th, 2020 as National Energy Efficiency Day. This day helped us highlight the importance of energy efficient policies and what each of us can do to contribute to the solution. I won't take up any more of your time, but as Governor of Nevada, I know that I cherish our accomplishments and stand committed to a safer and cleaner Nevada. Thank you again to the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy and for everyone that made today possible. Thank you all very much. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much, Governor Sisolak, for those great insights from Nevada. I know as someone who spends most of her time in the transportation space, we're very grateful for your leadership on adopting California's standards. Moving on, our final speaker will be Commissioner Andrew McAllister, who will share with us the latest from California. Commissioner McAllister is serving his second term on the California Energy Commission, where he leads the policy areas of energy efficiency and energy assessments. Commissioner McAllister has worked on energy deployment and policy since the early 1990s. He has worked across the world to deploy clean, cost-effective energy solutions with counterparts ranging from tiny remote communities to the largest of utilities. He administered 2 of California's signature renewable energy programs, developed and operated energy efficiency programs for utilities, and conducted a broad range of policy-related research for California and the federal government. Commissioner, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Shruti and ACEEE, Weston and Lauren and the whole crew. It's hard to follow 2 governors, particularly 2 as articulate and knowledgeable as Governors Polis and Sisolak. So privileged to be here today. And on behalf of Governor Gavin Newsom, I happily accept this year's mantle as first among the states in our collective pursuit of energy efficiency. In California, we've been doing energy efficiency for more than 45 years now. And the CEC, in fact, the Energy Commission, was created in part to pursue efficiency. And together with our sister agency, the California Public Utilities Commission, our collective efforts have saved our state's economy literally hundreds of billions of dollars over those decades. Efficiency is in California's DNA. And so we're justifiably proud. But in fact, the future is intensely bright for energy efficiency. It's the core strategy, as we've heard from the 2 governors and the ACEEE staff. It's really the core efficiency for confronting climate change through decarbonization. It's our primary decarbonization strategy. So buildings and appliances, our bread and butter efficiency resources, we will continue to push the efficiency envelope with each building code update across all building sectors and across many appliance categories focusing on decarbonization. These last 4 years have required vigilance and creativity and cooperation to maintain forward momentum. And in this, the states have come together like never before, along with partners across local governments, community organizations, manufacturers, and building industry partners of all types. It really does take a huge village. And the states, I say we are first among equals here. The states are working together tremendously well in building a large knowledge base to move us all forward. And California, in fact, is intensifying efficiency-related efforts on multiple fronts. And perhaps most notably, as Weston described and the report details, in transportation, deploying zero-emission vehicles and the necessary transportation infrastructure at scale. In September, Governor Newsom ordered that all new passenger vehicle sales in our state will be ZEVs, will be zero emission vehicles by 2035, and medium and heavy duty by 2045, which is absolutely huge. The retirement of the internal combustion engine represents a quantum leak in energy efficiency for transportation and for our economy as a whole, and will produce a host of related benefits, not least in air quality and the health of our people, particularly communities of color. Combined with a clean electric grid, efficiency is the primary strategy for decarbonization. For each high-efficiency heat pump that replaces an aged furnace or combustion water heater, its carbon footprint is cut by over 60% right off the top. That's a combination of clean fuel and energy efficiency. And as that number approaches 100%, as the carbon content of our grid declines, as it will by 2045, as the grid transitions fully to zero carbon supply, that number goes to 100%. So full-on reduction of carbon emissions. New programs on the multifamily and schools fronts will help our state move forward. We're investing literally tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on those two fronts. Really excited about those new programs. Modern energy efficiency can also and should be synonymous with grid reliability. As load flexibility emerges as a key strategy for managing the grid and containing its costs, our buildings, appliances, and vehicles will not only be extremely efficient, but they will also be good citizens on the grid. They will be aggregatable resources that will provide active support to the grid when needed. Equity. As Lauren and Weston highlighted in their comments and the report details, the fact that California has made inclusion central to our efforts across the board, not least in prioritizing program efforts to disadvantaged rural and low-income communities across the state, trying to create a culture of inclusion. We reach carbon neutrality together or we don't reach it. That is fundamental. And the workers building these cars, homes, and appliances, designing and engineering and manufacturing and installing and maintaining, they will be our fellow Californians, our fellow Americans, supporting their families and pursuing their dreams. These are sustainable, local, vital jobs, and there will again be millions of them across the land as we invest and bounce back from this tragic pandemic. Finally, California's innovation culture, research, development, demonstration, and deployment, RD&D. We have a 10-year, $1.5 billion runway now to invest in defining the new technologies and practices that will enable low-carbon solutions to thrive and to scale. We are really looking forward to partnering with the federal government and other states on that co-investment. We must do no less. We are living with the ravages of climate change. Fires, heat waves, drought. Our planet's at true risk. Aggressive active efficiency is the first and best part of the solution. So once again, I'm gratified to accept this honor on behalf of our state and our governor, and look forward to working with all the other states every year hence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner McAllister, for those great comments. We now have some time to address some questions from the audience. Just as a reminder, if you have a question, you can submit it via the Q&A engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. Also, we ask that if you are media or press, please note that when you submit your question. We should also mention that Governor Polis unfortunately had to drop off the call, but we're very pleased to have Zach Pierce to answer any Colorado-focused questions on his behalf. Zach is a special advisor on climate and energy from the governor's office. So thank you very much for joining to share your insights. So to get the Q&A section started, I have a question that someone wanted to pose to Weston, and that is, could you provide a little bit more context on how the scorecard was developed and created, and more details on sort of the methodology that you adopt?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for that question. So we've been putting out the scorecard now since 2007, and it's been an evolving process over the years. It's always been based on there's a 50-point point total that states can achieve. And it's divided out into several different policy categories. There, probably the most of the scorecard goes to utility and public benefits programs and policies, since that's where the most achievable potential is. But other huge categories in the scorecard include transportation and building energy efficiency policies. So a good deal, probably 20% of the scorecard goes to just actual savings achieved through programs delivered by utilities. So like those rebate programs and home energy audits and those types of programs that utilities offer to their customers to help them save energy. And so the states that tend to do well in the scorecard are those that are driving their utilities to deliver meaningful programs through energy efficiency resource standards. But other major categories in the scorecard include building energy code, states that are adopting stronger codes for new construction. But we've also continued to add new metrics over time to sort of reflect the changing energy landscape. So this year we added a couple metrics related to EV adoption, looking at amount of EV infrastructure that's been deployed across the state. And so, yeah, it's an evolving process, the scorecard, over time, and we're always looking for ways to improve it.
Thanks, Weston. And sort of as a follow-up to that, almost all our speakers flagged COVID as being one of the elephant in the room this year with regards to the results. Can you talk a little bit as to how the analysis incorporated COVID this year?
Sure, yeah. And so this year, since particularly our utilities metric is sort of a little bit of a lacking indicator since it's based off of the most recent available data from 2019. So a lot of the disruptions that have occurred to programs this year will not be are not directly captured in this year's report. We're expecting to have a better sense of those next year when sort of end of year program reporting is out. So we do capture some of the ongoing trends this year, and we did see a lot of the impacts to programs varied from state to state. But for the most part, the impacts of COVID did not impact our utilities chapter. It did slow a number of states on their policymaking efforts. So there's probably certain types of policies that maybe they could have gotten through without legislatures working remotely. We did notice a lot of progress, but I think the question of how COVID impacted 2020 programs will be better understood next year, I think.
That's good to know. And sort of continuing along the COVID trend, let me ask this question to our whole panel. How can states continue to advance energy efficiency amid the challenges of COVID? Commissioner McAllister, can we start with you perhaps?
Sure. There we go. Sure. Well, finally, it looks like the light is somewhat still pretty far down the tunnel, but at least it's there. But we've got to get people back to work and figure out how to support local governments to get their building departments back taking care of projects across the board. Many of them have done actually a remarkable job of keeping their permitting pipelines up and running and allowing projects to go forward. As you know, we specified, many states specified as essential workers, the construction industry, and made very clear that home energy work and energy efficiency work generally was part of that ecosystem and ought to continue. So we kind of have been limping along like that, but I think as we do reach into 2021, we'll be able to invest, focus on job training, pivot towards decarbonization. We have a lot of parallel efforts to focus on heat pumps. Many of the speakers, several of them have mentioned the new technologies that we really depend on to get to our decarbonization goals. Well, ramping that up is going to require a very large investment that we're preparing to make.
Governor Sisolak.
Thank you. I appreciate it's a good question. We've done a lot with my fellow Western states. We've worked together on the COVID pandemic regarding PPE. We've got a Western States coalition we did to certify that the vaccine was safe. We worked well when it came to wildfires. I mean, I worked with Governor Newsom, and we sent some planes up there. I wish we had more assets to send, but we didn't. But we sent what we could possibly send. And I think we've got a great coalition here with Governor Newsom, Governor Polis, Governor Grisham, and those that you've met, Governor Inslee, Governor Brown, that, we talk about these issues together. And the Western Governors Association has been helpful for that. And we continue to communicate best practices and ideas as we move along because I'm not a big one of inventing the wheel. I mean, it's already been invented. And if we can talk to our colleagues and come up with a plan, a strategy, we're all better off as a result of that.
Great, thank you, Governor Sisolak. Zach?
Yeah, I would reiterate comments made from the other two panelists, the governor and the commissioner, and would just add, as Governor Polis mentioned, we certainly see the economic opportunity associated with continuing to advance our clean energy transition. This was one of our fastest growing job sectors pre-COVID, and we know that it's going to be one of those critical sectors that's going to lead to our economic stabilization and growth moving forward. And so certainly we have a lot of the policy direction, whether it's specific energy savings targets, beneficial electrification targets, transition in the transportation sector, but also the economy-wide emissions reduction targets. And so with those signals, we're working with the private sector, with local governments, with partnering states to do everything we can to fully take advantage of the economic opportunity that comes with embracing this sector.
Great, thank you so much, Zach. Moving on to the next question that I've received here, which is focused on equity and environmental justice. How do governors' offices and energy commissions sort of think about tying efficiency programs to environmental justice issues? The speaker wants, the listener wants to know if you're issuing rebates or other specific assistance to environmental justice communities. Zach, perhaps we can start with you since you're on camera.
Yeah, so this is another topic certainly that the governor spoke to, whether we're thinking about the co-benefits of reducing local air pollution or the co-benefits of job growth, rate stabilization when it comes to our climate agenda. We're certainly thinking through impacts to low-income communities. I think a lot of that, as you mentioned, comes to specific carve-outs for incentives, financial support, that type of thing. But I think it also closely relate particular communities in the development of policy, the implementation of policy as part of the roadmap that Governor Polis mentioned. We're in the process of developing a climate equity framework that tries to better identify these disproportionate impacts, tries to add a venue to ensure that we're implementing best practice engagement strategies, that we're really considering clearly articulated outcomes when it comes to actually implementing and realizing environmental justice principles.
I can jump in on that one if you'd like as well.
Please go ahead.
So yeah, a number of things to mention. Our Public Utilities Commission, similar to Zach's point just now, earlier this year adopted some equity metrics that they're going to use, that they are going forward going to use to gauge success in this arena. So that'll be helpful on the program front. And we also have, as a state, really jointly between the California Energy Commission and the Public Utilities Commission, a disadvantaged communities advisory group that was constituted a little over a year ago, that really all of our programs in the energy sphere go through for feedback and input. And this is not just a box being checked. This is real engagement, real input, and we take the advice from that group. We consult them on all of our program efforts. And so they're really a high-level policy player, and that puts equity right at the center of our program designs. And I'll just mention 3 programs. We have a group of programs around sort of climate communities that are across a few different agencies. Within the Energy Commission and the Public Utilities Commission, there's several programs. Obviously, the low-income weatherization, both federal and state. We invest hundreds of millions of dollars in that every year. Also, 2 new programs that are worth mentioning. Assembly Bill 841 is focusing on schools in disadvantaged communities across the state. And we'll be investing around $500 million over the next 4 years in upgrading our schools, focused on energy, but also indoor air quality and water efficiency, upgrading those schools, and huge problem with deferred maintenance, as in many places across the country. And then finally, Senate Bill 1477 is focused on promoting heating, essentially heating decarbonization in new multifamily construction. We have a housing crisis in California. We need to build more multifamily housing, and we need to give that sector all the support it can get. At the same time, we help it decarbonize along the way. And so SB 1477 is the program that's aiming to begin that process.
Governor Sisolak.
Okay, I appreciate that's a great question. I want to add just a few things to what two of my previous colleagues had said, and I agree. We've done a lot in our schools to try to bring our inner city schools, our urban schools into compliance with a lot of these issues. Unfortunately, we've been focused on building new schools in Nevada as opposed to some of the upkeep and maintenance and modernization of the existing schools. So that's something we're working on. And we've also working with the Public Utilities Commission on utility disconnects, especially the example that came up during this COVID crisis, that we are not having the utilities being disconnected on these individuals that are in low-income areas and families that just simply can't afford to pay their bills. And we went to the level of declaring racism a public health crisis in Nevada, because there is no doubt whatsoever that communities of color, our Black and brown communities and our underprivileged communities, income socioeconomic disadvantage, food insecurity, are suffering in a larger area, a larger degree than other communities are. I mean, when it's hot out here and it gets hot in Las Vegas and in Nevada, it's hotter in some of these communities. It's an asphalt jungle. And when it's cold, it's colder in these communities because we don't have the resources and the homeless facilities. So we're working in that regard to make it as equitable as it possibly can be.
Great, thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question. So to wrap up the Q&A, I will ask something that a viewer has just sent in to us, asking what state leaders are most looking forward to with regards to changes in federal policy. And I will add to that by asking a little bit further, how do you see the role of states changing with this new federal administration? Governor Sisolak, perhaps you could take the first stab since you're online.
Just got to unmute here. Okay. The state is taking the lead as it relates to these issues as best we possibly can. Unfortunately, we did not get a unified plan from the federal government and when it dealt with dealing with COVID and the distribution of something as simple as PPE or testing. You know, we had all formulate our own plan, and that's where the Western governors got together and tried to pool our resources and our buying capabilities. But we're doing what we can to communicate. We joined the Paris Climate. Hopefully, President Biden will join the Paris Climate Accord. We did in Nevada. We've gone a long way towards adopting these issues because it's extremely important to us. But it's more, the governors have been the backstop to this. And unfortunately, a lot of these issues have become partisan issues. And they shouldn't be partisan issues. They should be health issues, environmental issues, people issues. It's taken a partisan note, and that's because I think the administration and the information that's come out of Washington. So we're going to do whatever we can to reverse that and to get us back on track.
Great. Commissioner McAllister?
Yeah, I mean, in general, we have now a presumed appointee to be the Energy Secretary, so that's a huge step forward. And Governor Granholm is a known quantity. I just actually began as chair of the board of the National Association of State Energy Officials, and this is always a topic among the states. Is that what will we do when we have a change in administration? And so a lot of planning and positive expectation, I think, about better engagement and partnership improvements along multiple fronts. Certainly, if there is stimulus, the state energy program and the weatherization assistance program that's resources that goes to all the states. And so if that happens, then the states will tremendously benefit, and that partnership through those federal programs will be excellent to amp up. On the appliances front, the Department of Energy has a big backlog, and we're really looking forward to working with them to get the 28 or so appliance categories through and caught up, so that the federal government's in compliance with statute. Certainly in EERE, the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office in the Department of Energy, as well as the Office of Electricity, We have good relationships already, but we certainly anticipate more engagement in those two offices and really across the board with research and development partnerships across the Department of Energy and the federal government, so including the US EPA with the Energy Star program. So very optimistic about where things are going.
That's good to hear. And Zach, any final words on this question?
I would just say, due to the leadership of Governor Polis, Governor Sisolak, other states that have been very engaged on these issues over the last few years, members of the U.S. Climate Alliance, I think the incoming administration and the federal government will have a lot to work with when it comes to state-based examples of innovating and leading on climate policy, on energy savings policy. And we certainly look forward to a strong partnership on a number of these topics. I'd agree with a number of the stimulus investments that Commissioner McAllister mentioned. Certainly on the regulatory and policy front, Governor Polis has been very vocal with our congressional delegation, with our counterparts in the federal government, and we look forward to a partner in the federal government to achieve these goals that we know provide a lot of potential in terms of local pollution reduction, obviously leadership on climate, but economic growth in these sectors.
It's great to hear. So I think that was the last question that we have. So I'll go ahead and wrap up this session. I want to take a moment to thank our distinguished panel of speakers. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today to release the results of ACEEE's 2020 State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. And thank you to everyone else for participating in today's webcast. We will be sending participants and viewers a link to the recording in a couple of days. So we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to hearing from you again. Thanks so much.